Hi everyone, let's talk about the Black History Fact of today. Today we're going to talk about some of the ways that slaves, African American slaves or African slaves, before they were considered American, some of the ways that they would do resistance in the plantations. Let's talk about it. So one of the things that they did was work slowdowns, which was when slaves would deliberately work more slower, sometimes even simulating illness or injury to avoid work. Another way was breaking tools or equipment, so damaging or misplacing tools was a way to express resentment and disrupt the work process. So feigning illness, this was when enslaved people would pretend to be sick to avoid work or to gain time off. They also would do shoddy work. So deliberately producing low quality work was another form of resistance. And one of the most common things that they did was run away. So many enslaved people will run to escape enslavers, sometimes for a short time to negotiate better conditions or to escape permanently. I don't know why you would negotiate, but anyways, I guess. Forming hidden communities. So runaways sometimes establish hidden communities in remote areas, offering sanctuary from slavery. Using the Underground Railroad, that's very popular. This was a network for safe houses, routes that help enslaved people escape to free states and Canada. There also were rebellions. There were a lot of rebellions, some documented, some not documented, some were destroyed, if you know the history of the United States. They have the Stono Rebellion of 1793. This was a large-scale rebellion in South Carolina where enslaved people seized weapons and killed white residents. You have the Nate Turner's Rebellion of 1831, a more widespread and violent rebellion in Virginia. This was led by an enslaved preacher who believed he had been called by God to lead his people to freedom. You had other rebellions, so numerous other slave rebellions occurred throughout American history, although many were small in scale, but were quickly suppressed. You did have other ways. Some slaves did theft and arson, so some enslaved people engaged in theft or arson as acts of resistance. Then you had acts of violence. In some cases, enslaved people would use violence to resist their enslavers or defend themselves, which, honestly, I'm not mad at you for using that route. The form resistance that was most feared by slaveholders was violent insurrection. Why are we not surprised? You're afraid of what you do to other people. Crazy, right? Anyways, throughout the history of slavery, African captives and enslaved African Americans had taken up arms and fought back against their captors. In the early 19th century, there came a series of armed revolts in Louisiana, South Carolina, and Florida. And by the rebellion led by Nate Turner in Virginia, and which more than 50 European Americans were killed. So slave holders were haunted by the possibility of a large-scale uprising that publicized lurid accounts of Turner uprising and other sometimes fictional conspiracies in the hopes of increasing public vigilance. In the North, however, their efforts found a way different audience that they inspected. It birthed the call of abolition. It sparked conversations for freedom, for rights, and equal treatment. Also, too, people in support of the rebellions. There were African American founded anti-slavery newspapers such as the Mirror of Liberty, Freedom's Journal, the National Watchman, and the North Star. So they sparred with the defenders of slavery in the pages of the newspapers and magazines and posted broadside on city streets. Soon, a new genre of literature came into being as abolitionists flooded the market with books and provided the true accounts of life under slavery, of hair-raising escapes, and of the lives of free African Americans who had risen to public prominence. Advocacy groups were also birthed in response to having civil rights and fair treatment for slaves and for people to be free.